Okay. Right. Hello people, I am Akshita and I am back after ages. Uh, Funny story, okay? I recorded nearly 3 videos, of which this same video that I'm recording today I had recorded yesterday, but due to some technical issues I lost that video and hence I am here recording this entire thing again. So today what I want to share with you primarily is my experience of this 3-month acting workshop that I did recently. It's been nearly a month since it got over, but I was recently going through all my stuff and everything, and I found a lot of the notes and my script and a lot of other things associated to that production, which were very, very close to my heart. I just sort of want to document it so that my elder self can sort of come back and watch this and just realize कि 19-year-old Akshita कैसी थी. Okay, so I had done plays in school and college before. Not so much in school, but primarily in college in the first 2 years. But while doing the productions of college especially, I realized that even though I liked performing on stage, I was also very interested in exploring the entire idea a little deeply, right? So basically the entire idea of getting into a character, of performing, what are the nuances, how am I to make myself better, when we're preparing for a play that is a very college oriented thing, you don't have enough time. Like I remember we had pulled off a couple of plays in like barely 10 days, and that is not enough time to understand a character, to sort of get into their mindset, to understand the way that they speak or the way that they think, which is primarily like the most important thing I feel. I've always wanted to explore this a little more. That's when I got to know about this workshop happening. I had a few other commitments and I had hoped that I would find a little more work in that particular phase. However, over time, due to some reasons, I didn't get the work that I wanted to do, which is why there came a period where I legit was scared that I may not be able to go back and perform in college again. I was going through an all-time low phase, which is when this idea of taking part in this workshop sort of came back to me. It was always there at the back of my mind, but I never sort of felt that I was ready for it. Also, because I had heard from a lot of seniors who had been a part of this workshop that this was very physically challenging, especially physically challenging because it was very strenuous, and that's sort of why I was also a little nervous, to go ahead, because I didn't know how much stamina I had or how much I would be able to pull myself through the workshops and everything. Because of those few things that happened, my morale sort of went down, and I sort of just felt like, maybe acting was not something that I could do. I knew it was something that I'd always loved, and I don't know how I got that love, but it's just that I really enjoyed being on stage. I enjoyed playing other characters. I think because I was going through an all-time low, I sort of had this thing in me that I wanted to motivate myself. I didn't want to lose that one thing that I felt I could do, and that is why I sort of decided that, despite everything else, these 3 months I want to spend it on myself, and not care about what people might think or what, who will say what and how people will react. I just didn't want to think of that, so I convinced my parents and eventually they agreed, and that's how I stepped into the workshop. I remember the first day, I had a weird sort of a feeling. It was, I don't know how to explain this, but like if I had to explain it that day, I would say it was a weird sense of nervous excitement. I was extremely nervous, but at the same time, I could not wait for the workshop to begin. I could not wait to actually go out there and just see how the world revolves, what are the things that we're gonna get into and stuff like that. So all the activities that we were asked to do in the first 2 days were group activities, and that's another thing that kind of surprised me, because it was for the first time in my life I knew I was going to meet a group of people I had never met before. I would be surrounded by people I never had known, The fact that I was not scared to meet a group of fresh faces, the fact that it didn't scare me was something of an achievement in itself, at that time. And I think it's after that I realized I really now have come to a point in my life where I enjoy talking to people. I like going to people, I like meeting them, I like speaking to them, I like knowing their stories, and just holding up a conversation. It's something that I've really started to enjoy, and it's something that I've started to look forward to. I did not absolutely remember the last time I had laughed that much, and that day, those 2 days of the workshop, I had laughed like crazy, like I remember it. I just felt like I had become a child again, like I didn't care about who was thinking, like I just knew for a fact that because I'm meeting a group of fresh people, I'm meeting a group of people I have never known, there is no sense of no barrier for me. So my idea was I could go and talk to them and just present any Akshita that I wanted to at that day, and they would not know the real me, so whatever I put up in front of them, they'd think that this is her. That just sort of gave me a confidence that I don't have any pressure on me at this time. I can just be whoever I want, I can do whatever I want. There's nobody to judge me really, because these people don't know me, so they can't judge me. So that's how it began. Over time I realized, and one other thing that really struck me in the first 2 days of the workshop was, I think, the environment, because I feel scared of making mistakes, like for me, my idea is to always have things to be as precise or as perfect. But that's what the workshop taught me. Every time that I made a mistake, it was okay, it was not a big deal. And the fact that I could make mistakes there, the fact that that environment allowed me to sort of just explore, just do it. By the third day of the workshop, sir saw something in the group of like 20 of us that we were there, and sir thought that it would be a good idea to hold up an entire production. We were all newcomers, we had barely stepped on stage, and yet we were all there. I remember on the fourth day we had the auditions for our character. So in the entire play Aadhe Adhure by Mohan Rakesh ji, there are 3 female characters. Savitri, who's the protagonist, her daughter Binni, and her other daughter Kinni. So now, for some reason, I just really wanted to play Binni. I wanted to play Savitri also, but then I realized that Savitri would be too high a jump for me. So for me at that time, I just felt that it would be a little safe to go for Binni. I remember the next day we had to prepare a couple of lines of our characters and then go and perform it. That was the first day that I was actually speaking on stage. So I had been there before, but I had never honestly opened my mouth there. So my voice had never traveled from the stage to the auditorium, to the audience. As I said, I was nervous about my own abilities, and I was unsure about myself, which is why I did not want to sort of go to that space. I just felt like I needed more time, to open up, to sort of be able to speak with that confidence on stage. But I feel that day when I went, sir wished me all the best, and I began with my character. And there were 2 points I remember very clearly in my audition, where sir at one point he nodded and the other point he said good while I was performing. And I think that is how I knew that I was going in the right direction with Binni. Once my audition got over, sir said something, after which the entire audience started clapping. It was my first time in the studio, performing a character, and people were actually clapping. And this was a huge thing for me, because all the moral set downs that I had in the past month had all, sort of been okay. Like I just felt like, that fear that I had lost the thing of acting was not there. So I could act, and people liked what I did, which is why they clapped. Eventually, sir made me the production in charge, which was a huge responsibility in itself. Although I do think I could have done much better, but it's okay. It was my first time, and I was just figuring a lot of things out at the same time. Okay, so while I was doing the workshop, I was also doing an internship. Now that internship was taking up a lot of my time and my energy. I had two things that I was doing at the same time, and it was not easy because I remember we had shoots where I had to get up at 3 in the morning, reach on location at 4, and this was for my internship, and then the next day I had to come do the workshop, and like the next day as in like the same day. So basically, I'm up at 3, I've gone for shoot at 4 a.m. in the morning, I have returned at 12, I have slept for an hour, changed, gone for the workshop, came back, had my dinner, revised my lines, ate, slept, got up at 5, again revised my lines. At 10, I leave for my workshop, I do the day, and then I come back at 7 or 8, and that was what some days of my life looked like at that time. So I was completely sleep deprived, completely food deprived, and it was very difficult. I was enjoying the entire thing a lot, but it was difficult for me. What made it even more difficult was that even though I was trying very hard, I was not able to memorize my lines. I would read my lines, memorize them, do everything, have the backstory ready in my head. But the moment I would step up on the stage, I would go on set and just sit, I would forget my lines, I would just completely go blank, and that's what sort of troubled other actors also. And that is, I think, something that we all struggled with for a very long time. I think nearly like 2 months, I think, we struggled with our lines. This struggle became so sort of difficult because it was not that I was not trying. I was trying really hard to get my lines right, but due to some, I don't know what reason, probably my lack of focus, I was not being able to deliver it when required, and that sort of really hurt me. Things had started troubling me itna कि there came a point when I went to sir and I told him that, sir, this is a huge responsibility, I don't know how to take this, and I like legit burst into tears. And I remember sir said one thing कि जब तक responsibility लोगे नहीं तब तक responsibility लेना सीखोगे कैसे. I remember I was all like with my puffy eyes and everything. I went and I sat and my friends were there, and they sort of started comforting me कि नहीं ठीक है, इतना stress मत लो, हो जाएगा. And just after that I had a few lines for which I had to go back on stage. So I entered the stage and then we had to come back because we were redoing that scene. And while I was walking back to the wings, sir looked at me and said, सुन लड़की, and I turned around and he said, show तू ही करेगी. And that for me was a huge motivation because at that time I didn't believe myself enough to be able to perform a character like Binni, because for me initially when I began, my thought was simply that I'll have to go on stage, say a few lines, and come back. But then the character that Binni was, the fact that she is a human, she's going through real emotions, I could have been in her place. That thought was very difficult for me, because of the things that she had gone through, which is why I felt that it was a huge responsibility to simply do justice to whatever level I could do justice to. This is another very important thing that the play taught me. Before this, all the productions that I had done, my idea of going on stage and performing, my idea of acting was simply going on stage, saying a few lines and coming back. So basically it was Akshita going on stage as some character, performing that and coming back. So I had never really realized the difference between the character that I'm playing and the person that I am. So the fact that these are two very different people had never struck me enough. And while doing Binni, this thought sort of this struck me. And sir had mentioned this, that I don't want to see Akshita when I'm as an audience. I am here to see Binni. So don't show me Akshita, show me Binni. And that is how the process of sort of understanding Binni began. So towards the end of the play, so we I think barely had a few weeks left for the play to premiere, I somehow got this realization that Binni and Akshita are two very different, very separate people. So I cannot at any point mix the two. So basically I would use my experiences to form Binni's experience. Binni is the elder daughter, and being the elder daughter, she feels it is her responsibility that she has to maintain the equilibrium in her family, right? So basically, she acts as the balancing or the neutralizing figure between all the characters in her house. She's the one who's always trying to bind everything together. Binni had run away and married this guy Manoj, but after a couple of years of their marriage, she somehow feels that there is something amiss. She can't identify what that is, but there's something that is always troubling her. She can understand that there's something which is not going right in their relationship, but what that thing is, she's not being able to identify, which is why she tries to come to her home and sort of look for that thing. So this one thing, the fact that she had run away and married Manoj, was something that had sort of stuck with me, and I could not get it out of my mind. For me, I feel Binni was somebody who wanted to keep everybody around her happy. Someone like her running away and getting married was something that didn't add up, it just somehow didn't make sense to me. So that's when I started to think more about it, and that's when I came up with the backstory of Binni and Manoj. So basically, how did she see him, meet him, how did she sort of start having feelings, and what was the exact point where Manoj was able to manipulate her, or sort of, use his past to convince her to an extent that she was ready to leave her family just on his word. There was another fun thing that I did. I was walking down Newmarket once, and I saw a ring, and for some reason I couldn't get my eyes off it, and I bought it, and that ring I used to treat as the ring that Manoj had given Binni. I used to get up in the morning and wear that ring, and then I would take it off only at night. So the entire day that ring would be in my hand, and every time I would look at it, I was unconsciously or subconsciously reminded of the play. So even in the times when I was free or I was not doing anything, I was subconsciously thinking about the play, the characters, the lines, and legit, and I am not even kidding, once I became a little more comfortable with the lines would run in my head like anything. Like at random points in the day or in my random conversations with people, I would end up using those lines, those phrases, and just somehow feel connected to the play. And there were times when I was going through a lot of emotional stress, emotionally, mentally, because there were exercises where our emotions had to be triggered for us to be able to play those emotions for our characters, right? So that was a little difficult at sometimes, but even then, that entire process was very fulfilling, even though it was a little painful, because I think that's what I have also realized. Theatre brings your emotions to the surface. There are a lot of things that we hide from people, but then there are certain things which we hide from our own selves, and I don't know how, but probably it's our defense mechanism that we hide it in a way that we sort of completely forget that it ever existed. Theatre brings those emotions to the surface level, and it's difficult to come to terms with those emotions. I remember there was one exercise in the very initial days which triggered me, which angered me to an extent that I said a few slangs, and I am somebody who does not say slangs, so I am very reserved in my way of talking, or I make sure that I mostly try to say the the correct thing at the correct time, sort of thing. And saying slangs out loud in front of 20 people is not something that I would do. And somehow that day my emotions were triggered to an extent where I did that, and it suddenly like the trance broke, and I just I held my head like this, and I'm like, what have I done? And then sir said ki whatever you have in you, just take it out. Before that emotion had come up to the surface, subconsciously somehow I would always feel sorry for myself, for not being able to go through that particular thing, that one thing that had happened. I don't know if it makes sense, but there was one, I was not able to come to terms with it. But the fact that that day I was able to get that anger out of me. From the next day itself, I was able to accept that fact better. I was able to understand myself better and come to terms with whatever had happened, to a point that it had stopped affecting me anymore. And that's what I really love about it. It sort of heals you. It pains you, and yet it heals you in a very beautiful way. I remember on the day of the play, so just after our line rehearsal, which I had messed up because I was extremely nervous and I was extremely not focused due to a lot of reasons. It was troubling me, and I just realized that I had to calm myself down before the play. Sir had asked us to stay in that set, in that environment for whatever time we were there. I switched on music and I was listening to my album for a very long time, and that's when I started journaling. I wrote about Binni, I wrote about my feelings and emotions at that time. It sort of really helped me to be in that zone. Writing about it made me realize why I was there at that time. The things that I had gone through a couple of months back, and now the confidence that I had in me, that I was pulling off a character like Binni while we were sitting in the wings and we knew that the audience was now entering the auditorium. I remember there was something that I felt. I was nervous, of course, about going on stage, but then there was something else that also sort of calmed me down at that moment. I don't know how, but I just had the confidence that despite everything, I know Binni enough. I know her enough to be able to handle whatever happens, at the moment. So even if I mess up something, I know I will be able to be Binni and react to the situation. At the moment I stepped on stage, the first 2 or 3 minutes, I was very conscious of the fact that there was a complete houseful audience watching me, and it was also something that struck me, that people were actually going to pay to watch me. But I feel eventually I sort of got into the zone of Binni, and it came to a point where I completely forgot that there was actually an audience watching me, and that is how I was able to maintain the thought for a very long time, till a very funny incident happened. The dabba, so I was supposed to open a dabba in the scene. So basically I have to ask my brother Shrish Ashok. Shrish is a person who played him, and I asked Ashok to give me to open that dabba for me. And the funny thing was that this dabba was actually a paint ka box, which was for the longest time impossible to open. So for the past 3 months I'd been struggling to open the dabba, and never for once had the dabba opened. And not just me, like everybody there in the group, everybody, and everybody includes all those bhaiyas who go to the gym, and who are like very strong and stuff. Like they were not able to open that dabba. And that day on stage, when I'm asking my brother to open the dabba for me, somehow the dabba blasts open in my hand, and I was in shock for a few moments because my hands were red. The paint was red in color and my hands were red. My costume was almost red. I was like, God, what is happening? Because, of all things, I had not expected that dabba to blast open, and this was one of those things, the few things, when you're going on stage and, you just had this thought, what if something goes wrong? What if the dabba blasts in your hand? And this was one of those things. This was probably the only thing that I thought could go possibly wrong. And it did. Somehow, we managed the entire scene. We pulled through somehow. But that thought of the dabba blasting open and then me struggling to close it was something that really sort of kept poking me for the longest time. Anyways, I had to then go inside the wings, and while I was in the wings, I was desperately trying to get the paint off my hands. Okay, there was another funny thing that happened. I was supposed to make tea on stage. And making tea while saying the lines was a struggle in itself. It was too much of a struggle because I am a person who is extremely clumsy. For me to carry a plate full of ceramic stuff on the stage with garam chai was difficult. I was usually not nervous while pouring the tea, but that day with all of those eyes on me, I was a little nervous. So while I was pouring the tea, I unconsciously poured a little too much, so much so that it spilled. And my dad said this to me later. He's like, I was watching you pour the tea, and I knew that the tea would fall, and it did. I'm like, I was messed up. Okay, so that happened. But I feel overall, I had a great experience. This was for the first time that I was doing playing a character like Binni. For me, the lines were a struggle. For me, I was not able to get my lines right for the longest time. I was one of those few people who could not get their lines right till sort of the end of the second month. But I think even then, I think I feel that I did justice to Binni in the sense that I could at least understand the fact that she is not just a character from a book. She is a real living person who has valid emotions, who is going through a lot of things in life, and I perhaps could have been in her place. This video was about her. This was my emotions regarding the character that I played, the struggles that I had, and obviously talking about it now feels weird, as in, it's been quite a few weeks now since the play has gotten over, and the fact that I still want to talk about it, and the fact that I want to tell myself about this experience, but I feel I really would want to know how 19-year-old Akshita thought of this character, and which is why I'm making this video primarily. So I think there are certain things that in life you should do for yourself. You should not think about what others are thinking, how they would judge you, or whether what you're doing is pleasing them or not. The entire 3 months that I spent, I had an amazing time because of the experiences that I had, the people I met. It was an amazing experience. I probably would not shy away from saying that these 3 months I laughed more than I probably would have in my entire life, and I had a wonderful time. There were times when I was happy, there were times when I was scolded, but then also appreciated, and I feel now when I look back, I feel grateful for the time that I've had. I feel now, after a month, I really wish I could go back to that zone. I really wish I could play Binni again, because now somehow I have been able to understand her better. So I also believe that the more time that you spend with a character or with the thought of that character, the better it is. And this is for me more than all. I would come back really soon with another such video. So bye bye till then.